Hi, I'm a photographer and this is Inside Motorsport. In this episode, I'll take you behind the scenes of a VCARB and Sauber TPC test session held in Imola on January 23rd. But before starting, here's a bit of context. TPC stands for Testing of Previous Cars. These are official, FIA-regulated test sessions where a team is allowed to run a car that is at least 2 seasons old, so neither the current car nor the previous year's one can be used. In this case, both VCARB and Sauber use their 2023 cars, respectively the AT04 and the C43. For each team's official drivers, TPC tests are limited to a maximum of 1,000 km per calendar year, while there is no limit for the reserves. Both machines featured liveries different from their original designs. The Racing Bulls was painted with a white front section and a very dark blue rear, decorated with stripes matching the color of the front. The Stake, on the other hand, ran a completely black livery, but without any exposed carbon fiber. The teams had already run on the previous days. In fact, VCARB tested on Tuesday the 21st with Tsunoda and on Wednesday the 22nd with Ajar, while Sauber put both of its full-time drivers on track on the 22nd. On the day I was there, the 23rd, Iwasa was driving for the Faenza-based team, while Bortoleto was behind the wheel for the Swiss squad. The weather that day was overcast and quite cold, with temperatures between 5 and 7 degrees. Although it didn't rain, the track was still fairly damp. Both cars used a full wet compound, even though the conditions weren't particularly extreme. As you can see, the spray coming off the tires wasn't very intense. As soon as I arrived, around 12:30, after walking past the paddock to ask for some informations, I moved over to the main straight, where I spotted a VCARB's mechanic. The first to hit the track was Bortoleto, who completed a few laps around 1:30. Once he returned in the pits, the Brazilian driver remained in the garage for over 1 hour. At that point, I moved to the Acque Minerali section, where I stayed for the entire afternoon. Shortly before 2 p.m., Iwasa took to the track. He's a driver from the Red Bull Academy, who finished in 4th position in the 2023 Formula 2 Championship. The Japanese driver completed only an installation lap before returning to the pits. A few minutes later, he went back out for a longer stint, staying on track for about 15 minutes and completing approximately 9 laps. During that session, I took this photo. The man you see in the frame had stopped to watch a few laps and filmed the car on track with his phone. A couple of laps later, Iwasa made his main mistake of the day. He locked up and went off into the gravel, but managed to keep the car moving and reached the escape road without getting stuck. Following that, he returned to the pits for checks, likely to assess any damage to the floor. 15 minutes later, around 2:30 p.m., Iwasa came back out for another stint of about 10 laps. I remained in the same spot, but I made more use of the zone. One interesting detail visible in these photos is the driver's name, written next to the flag of his country. You can spot it under the airscope, just behind the helmet. Afterward, I started moving towards Piratella. Meanwhile, around 3 p.m., Bortoleto returned to the track for a very short stint, after a 1 hour and 20 minutes break. This shot was the most particular of the day. I took it through one of the small gaps I found in the wall, which is near the first corner of the Acque Minerali. As I continued towards Piratella, I found a spot with a dedicated opening for photographers. It was particularly useful that day because during no-race events, most grandstands at Imola are closed, making it difficult to find good photo spots compared to other circuits like Monza. The position was just before the Acque Minerali, allowing me to capture part of the preceding straight and the entry of this iconic corner. The first driver I spotted there was Iwasa, who returned to the track for 4 laps around 3:15. Bortoleto, on the other hand, remained in the pits until 3:30. When he rejoined, I photographed him heading to Acque Minerali. This turned out to be one of my favorite shots of the day. This time, the Brazilian driver completed a longer stint, staying out for about 10 minutes. Since reaching Piratella proved to be quite tricky, I decided to head back towards Acque Minerali, where I accessed the only grandstand still reachable by climbing over the barrier, the central one. I spent the final half hour of action there. Iwasa returned to the track at 3:45. Performing several practice tasks from the main straight. At 3:55 p.m., Bortoleto joined him, carrying out similar procedures. After each lap, Both drivers returned to the pit lane, probably stopping near the pit exit. During these passes I took a few pannings, and many pictures using a longer zoom. In my opinion, the coolest ones are these close-ups of the driver exiting the corner, where the helmet and some other details around the cockpit are clearly visible. After about 10 practice starts, the test day came to an end about 10 minutes past 4 pm. Overall, during the afternoon it was completed significantly more laps than Bortoleto, most likely because reserve drivers aren't subjected to the 1000 km limit that applies to full-time drivers. And that's it for this episode. I'll see you in the next video, which will focus on the Katayama tests held in Monza a week later, involving some Formula 2 and Formula 3 drivers.